Well, welcome back to our course on systems design as we look at it from the perspective of Dennis Wixom and Roth in their system analysis and design textbook. We are now getting into the third major area, the design phase. And so if you've been following along with all of these lectures, you can see how we're getting this development slowly put together, mostly thinking in terms of creating an information system. And so now let's go ahead and get into moving into design. And so this will be the going from the analysis into the design objectives and things that we would be focusing on there. So these are the objectives for this chapter and for this lecture. Explain the initial transition from analysis to design. We'll look into creating a system specification. Describe 3 ways to acquire a system, either through custom development, packaged, that would be another possibility, and outsource alternatives, and we'll get a chance to be thinking about those. And then we'll create an alternative matrix. And this gets into looking at analysis of alternatives with weighted things that you use for evaluation criteria, which is something that we also look at in my system engineering course. And so please feel free to think about that. So the design phase of the system development lifecycle uses the requirements that were gathered during the analysis to create a blueprint for the future system. A successful design builds on what was learned in earlier phases and leads to a smooth implementation by creating a clear and accurate plan of what needs to be done. So in this chapter, we get into describing the initial transition from analysis to design and presenting 3 ways to accomplish this design for the new system. The design phase decides how the new system will operate. So how is an operative word. Many activities will be involved as a development team develops the system requirements. And so what we're going to explore here is we provide an outline of those design phase activities, which culminate in the creation of the system specification. We also describe 3 alternative strategies for acquiring the system that are available to the development team. So thus we get into this transition from requirements to design. In system analysis, we figure out what the business needs. And then in system design, so analysis was the last phase, and now in the third phase, in system design, we figure out how to build a system that fulfills those needs. All of the, quote, logical work from system analysis is converted into, quote, physical. In the design phase, we decide how to build the system. We create the system requirements that describe all the technical details for building the system. The system specification is a final deliverable from the design phase, and it conveys exactly what system the development team will implement during the implementation phase. So here is a listing of the activities in the design phase, and so we're going to be having various places where that's going to show up as we go forward here in the next handful of chapters. And so we determined preferred system acquisition strategy. We can do make, buy, or outsource. We want to design the architecture of the system, make hardware and software selection, do design system navigation inputs and outputs, convert logical process model into a physical process model. We're going to update the case repository with additional system details. So we utilize our case tools some more, but in a different way. We design the programs that will perform the system processes. We convert logical data models into physical data models, and we update the case repository with additional system details. And so we keep updating as we go. We revise the CRUD matrix. You may want to go back to a previous lecture when we talked about that, or go into the textbook. We'll design the way in which the data will be stored, and we compile the final system specification. So this is, once again, oriented for an information system perspective of how we do the design development. So what are the elements of a system specification? First of all, there's a recommended system acquisition strategy. An acquisition strategy and other types of development, you would definitely have that highlighted and say even in a separate document. So the system acquisition is weighted. You have an alternative matrix, and we'll show an example with three different alternatives. And so here we're doing a weighted way of evaluating based on the evaluation criteria is which one we recommend. There's architectural design, and we'll get a chance to be thinking about how we're going to be laying out this information system. We'll consider the hardware and software specification, what exactly needs to be put it in, what are going to be the drivers. We'll consider the interfaces. That's going to be something that's important. The physical process model, the program design specification, the physical data model, the data storage design. We'll update the CRUD matrix and update the case repository entries. All of that's what's going to be part of what will be going on for this phase. So one of the ways that we can acquire a new system, we can have a custom development. So we build from scratch in-house. So this may be maybe the resources to do that are available. It may or may not be the most cost effective, but if you have a workforce that you want to maintain the skills, it may actually pay off even if it might be a little bit more expensive. You could purchase the software packages and possibly customize this. And so you buy off the shelf. So you can install on your own computers for the company or obtain access from a software provider. And so they provide the hosting and maybe have access through the cloud. Or you can have outsourced development to a third party who might do it all. So they build a system from scratch, or they purchase software and customize it and install it. So you could, those are the options that would be available that you would want to be considering for an information system. For custom development, the pros, you get exactly what you want. That's good. The new system build consistently with existing technologies, and plus we want to have the standards that we adhere to. You want to build and maintain skills, technical skills and functions for your workforce. You have the knowledge in-house, so it's going to be easier for you to go ahead and maintain that system. It allows a team flexibility and creativity, and you can have a unique solutions that are created for and it can produce a strategic advantage. Some of the cons, it requires a significant time and effort. It may add to the existing backlog. It may require skills that the company may not have. And so maybe even if you do this way, you may have to supplement your workforce to get some of the skills that you may be lacking. It often costs more and often takes more calendar time, and there's a risk of a project failure. So you're not buying a shrink wrap system, you're actually having to work on your own. What about purchasing software? You can look at application service providers, ASP, that they supply access to software on a pay-as-you-go basis. And so many of these applications are in the cloud today, and the ASP provider hosts someone else's software. You have software as a service, SaaS software vendors host its own software. And there can be considerable savings. No hosting infrastructure needed. That provides everything. There is risk, though, the fear of losing confidential information and performance. You want to be analyze the vendor as well as the software functionality, and so this gets into software engineering areas, which is another course that you may want to take a look at that I have available. You want to verify vendor claims with others and look carefully at vendor support. You want to assess the long-term viability of a vendor as an ongoing business. You're creating a relationship that you're going to have to be dependent on them. A new software company may have a great idea, but can they survive as a business over the long haul? That's an example of a software engineering question. And if the vendor is an acquisition target, what will happen to the product? If someone's going to cannibalize it and you lose what you need, that would put you in a very difficult place. Okay, well, let's look at the pros and cons for ASP and SaaS. So the pros is there's no need to reinvent the wheel for common business needs. It's tested a proven product. There's can be cost savings, time savings. The vendors have the expertise that you can utilize. Some of the customization may be possible as well. For cons, it's rarely a perfect fit. Organizational processes must be adapted to the software. And so, do you really want to adapt to the software, or do you want it to go the other way? You're having to deal with reliance on vendor for maintenance and future. And that's going to get into when you're dealing with enhancements. Um, it will not be developed in-house, and so there's functional things that you're not going to have and technical skills that you're not going to have in-house. And unique needs may go unmet, and it may require system integration. So those are the things that need to be thought about. In terms of system integration, building systems by combining packages, either using existing, that is legacy systems, and custom software written for integration. All of those happen in this type of activity. Integrating data between various parts of the system is a key challenge. Many consultants specialize in system integration, so you may be able to augment your team if that's something that you're going to be look at doing it that way. Well, what about outsourcing? The pros is you hire expertise that you do not have. You may save time and money, and it could be lower risk. But look, there's more cons. There's no opportunity to build in-house. You're not going to have the expertise in your own company. You're reliant on a vendor even at a higher level than you would be for just buying software. The future options are limited. You're limited on what they're going to develop, and they're going to be developing those not solely based on what your needs are. There can be a security issue potential, and so that needs to be something that needs to be considered. And you may experience a loss of confidential information, and so that would be a real showstopper. And finally, you could have performance based on the contract terms, and so that may be an issue. So continue with outsourcing. You're hiring an external vendor, developer, or service provider to supply the system. It can also obtain custom systems created by the outsourcer. If it's large enough and the dollar amount is high enough, they may actually be willing to do some customization. You can reduce the cost or add value. And so by looking at resource and experiences, and the risks include losing confidential information, losing control over future development, and losing the learning opportunity. And all those are things that need to be carefully considered. Well, what about the outsourcing contracts? You can have time and arrangements where you agree to pay for whatever time and expertise are needed to get the job done. So whatever it costs, we'll pay. You could have a fixed price where you pay exactly what is agreed to. And so a fixed price contract, oftentimes they have to put in their profit above their base, and because there's a high risk for the contractor, they may actually put in more cost to ensure that they're able to do this. Another option is a value added where the sourcer reaps some percentage of the completed system's benefits, and so there's an incentive or maybe a residual that's part of how you incentivize them to be working with you, and it's a win-win situation. In terms of outsourcing guidelines, you want to keep lines of communication open. You want to define and stabilize requirements before signing the contract. You want to view the relationship as a partner. Select the vendor, developer, or provider carefully. And so you have a lot higher connection with that contractor. You want to assign someone to manage the relationship. Do not outsource what you do not understand. And so that would be really important. If you don't understand, you may need to hire someone that could in-house to make sure that you get that know-how. And you want to emphasize flexible requirements, long-term relationships, and short-term contracts. So what are the influences that are going to be on the acquisition strategy? You want to be thinking of the business need, the in-house experience, the project skills, project management, and time frame. All of those are going to be part of the acquisition strategy. Okay, so here is a table that shows the acquisition strategy selection factors. And so your selection criteria, so you can be thinking of the business needs, the in-house experience, project skills, project management, and time frame. We saw all these listed here. Now we're getting into more details. When to use a custom development, when to use a package system, and when to use outsourcing. And so these are the things that maybe you could, I won't read through this whole table, but you can be seeing if there's any drivers. And so if the time frame is short, maybe just buying a commercially developed software would give you at least a gap filler. Maybe in the long term, you go to a custom development. So there's just a lot of trades that you need to be thinking about. Maybe you're early in the development of this company, and maybe you want to have a short or medium term contract with an outsourced capability until you decide that you need to do something on your own and take over all that responsibility. So how do you go about selecting an acquisition strategy? Start by collecting information. What tools and technologies are needed for a custom development project? What vendors make products that address the project needs? So you want to be informed what service providers would be able to build this application if outsourced. So you need to do your homework. Then you want to have your request for proposals, RFPs. You want to solicit proposals from vendors, developers, or service providers, most likely a handful, and have them explain the system to be, you need to explain to them the system to be built and criteria for selecting among applicants. This can include having a request for information. It's a shorter and less detailed version, so you can see what is the capability out there that you could possibly leverage. And then finally, you can have a request for quote, where not only you know exactly what you want, but you want a precise price for what you need and what you've communicated with them. So what are typical RFP contents? Description of the desired system, special technical needs or circumstances, evaluation criteria, the instructions on how to respond, the desired schedule, and other information that will help the submitter to make a more complete or accurate proposal. So all of these things would be conveyed to all of the bidders so they can make sure that they can do an excellent job in submitting their proposals. Okay, now let's talk about analysis of alternatives and how we actually do our decision in a structured way. So that's where we use the alternative matrix. It combines several feasibility analyses into one matrix. It includes technical, economic, and organizational feasibility. Those are the criteria areas that we're going to be highlighting. You assign weights to indicate the relative importance of the criteria, and then you assign scores to indicate how well the alternatives meet the criteria. So here is an example. We have three possible alternatives. We have criterias. We have a total of 8 criteria, straddling technical, economic, and organizational issues. We have the weighting, and so you can see that the criteria number 1, we're not being specific at this point, but this is relatively high. The highest one is under economic, and you can see that some of them are lower. And so we have 3 possible alternatives, and you can look at the relative score, 350, 270, and 360. So this one out here it is the one that scores the best. And so you have custom applications here, and then using package software. The package software for this case actually scores higher. Okay, so that's the contents of this chapter, and we'll just have a couple slides of review. So we looked at identifying and describing the steps associated with the design phase of the project. We explained the meaning and purpose of the components of the system specification. We looked at the pros and cons of obtaining a new system through a custom development. We looked at the pros and cons when we looked at a new system through purchasing a software package. And we looked at the pros and cons when looking at a new system through an outsourcing firm. We explain how the characteristic of the project influence the selection of the acquisition strategy. We explain the use of RFPs, RFIs, and RFQs as a way of gathering information from vendors. And we discuss the alternative matrix to systematically evaluate and compare alternatives and making a recommendation with all of those details that we have formulated. And once again, we have some terms. We had this RFI, RFP, RFQ. We had SAS, ASP, and so those were some of the acronyms, as well as enterprise resource planning and some other things that you can look over. Okay, thank you very much. That's it for this lecture.